Okay, good evening. As Ken said, we're at the December 9th GRAC meeting. Welcome. Just so you know, everybody should be connected through audio. If you are in the attendee pool and you called in, we will give opportunity to unmute your line if you need to add comment. Otherwise, if you joined online, you can indicate your willingness or need to speak through the Q&A section, which is going to be located at the bottom. Sorry, Tom. Can you see it now?
Yep.
The presentation is recorded. Oops, it's just zooming through here. Hold on. Let me go back. Our presentation is recorded. We post it to the GRAC website within 1 week. And if you're having technical difficulties, like I apparently am this evening, you can reach out to Zoom support. Oh my goodness. Who's driving this ship? Just a reminder that only the committee chair may recognize a public attendee. You can use the raise the hand feature or the Q&A to indicate your desire to participate. The chair will acknowledge when that time has arrived on the agenda. And that we do have 2 designated times on the agenda. And once you're officially recognized by the chair, you may have a time limit depending on the topic. And any new business that arises or that is suggested during the public comment period will be placed on the next GRAC meeting agenda. This evening, we do have translation services. So as a member, as you're attending, I know this is a pretty bad image, but you'll have the option to click the interpretation button. If you remain in the off mode, you'll remain in the main meeting room. If you would like translation services, you can click on English or Spanish, and that will pop you out into one of our side rooms where we do have 2 translators on hand tonight to assist with the meeting. And with that, I will stop sharing and hand it back.
Okay, we got hands up from both Kathy and Myra. Myra?
Mute. So you got to unmute. There you go.
Mira, estoy escuchando las dos personas que están interpretando en español.
Somebody needs to translate that.
Sí.
Yeah, Victor translating.
I'm not hearing from either Victor or Letitia.
You wouldn't, because they're in the side rooms.
So I guess everybody that needs English from Spanish needs to go to the English room.
Oh, now I have to know where do I click for that?
Down on the bottom.
Down there. Okay.
Interpretation and click English.
Okay, there we go.
Victor, can you speak now and see if we can hear you? I'm still not hearing anybody in the English channel. I can hear. Yep. Okay. Okay, so everybody that is in English channel, then Myra will, if Myra wants to speak in Spanish, that would be interpreted into English for us. Do you want to give it a try again, Myra?
Okay. Sí, ahora solo te escucho a ti, Leticia. Sam. Sí, estoy en el español. Sí, te escucho. Muy bien, gracias.
Thank you.
It's our first meeting doing this, so bound to be a couple bumps.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll get back on schedule. We'll have everybody introduce themselves. So let's start. Tom, you want to start?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Eggleston. I am the division manager for the Solid Waste and Recycling Division here at Washington County, and I am a non-voting member of the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. And I would ask sitting committee members if you could give a little bit of an extended introduction so that Hannah, Pete, and Myra can learn a little bit about you as well. Thanks, Ken.
Okay. And Kathy, unmute and identify yourself.
Kathy Christie.
Yeah, now we're hearing you.
Which Kathy?
You're muted most of the time.
It should be Kathy Christie because I'm not a member of GRAC. So
I'm doing staff back. I'm doing it backwards.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Folsom. I'm a senior policy coordinator for Solid Waste and Recycling Program. I worked for over 15 years now, and I help manage the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee.
Okay. Erin, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Erin Stein. I'm the operations supervisor for Solid Waste and Recycling, and I am the moderator for these meetings. Thank you.
Okay, and members of the committee, I'm Ken Foote. I chair the committee. I've been on the committee for a long time. My original interest was I got crossways with my hauler, who at the time was Aloha, and called up and complained and got my arm twisted into joining the board when they were looking for public members, and I've had a good time. And moving right along, let's go to Kathy Christie.
Hi, Kathy Christie, public member. Enjoyed being on this committee. I was a county commissioner, and this was a wonderful ability for me to continue in being interested in what's going on in the county.
Thank you. Sandra?
I'm Sandra Smith, unincorporated Washington County public member. I've been on the committee for 2 years, maybe 2.5. Also a master recycler. And I also live in unincorporated Washington County.
Vinod?
I'm Vinod Singh, industry member. I live in an unincorporated Washington County. I work for a processor of recyclables. I've been in the industry about 31 years this month. I saw the little flyer up, so I've been around for a while. I've been on the committee almost a year. So, sorry, my dogs are locked up and they're currently fighting. So I have to keep them locked up until my family gets home so they don't charge outside and bark up the neighborhood.
Okay. Ashvin?
Yeah, Ashvin Nagaraja. I'm a public member. I've been on for about 2.5 years. I currently work, I'm an industrial engineer at Intel in the planning department. So I've been in Oregon for about 6 years. And I'm an amateur compost and recycling enthusiast. So that's why I joined.
Great. Sue?
Sue Shade. I'm a public member. I live in unincorporated Washington County. I think I've been a member longer than Ken, I think. And I joined the committee because I was interested in how the system works, and I'm still learning about policy and procedure, and it's fascinating.
It is, and it's a constantly changing target. Peter, if you would introduce yourself in a short description of how you got here.
Did Sandra introduce herself yet?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sure, hi, I'm Pete. You can call me Pete, Pastors. Oh. Yeah, that's fine. And I am a public member, newly appointed. I live in unincorporated Washington County. I've been involved with recycling and waste management issues since 1982. And through that time, I started a recycling and waste reduction company. I managed recycling and refuse at a major Midwestern university. I oversaw all the non-disposal solid waste planning and programming for county government in North Carolina. I did some work as a consultant before landing at Oregon DEQ, where I've now been for about 9 years, working in the materials management program on all kinds of fascinating Oregon-related solid waste, recycling, waste minimization issues. My focus has been on the toxics reduction area. So I think of household hazardous waste, small business hazardous materials. That's kind of been my focus. And just to be clear, I'm not here as a representative of DEQ. I work there, I live in the county, and I'm here as a public representative. That's not to say that some of my perspectives might be shaped by the fact that I've worked there for 8 years, but I think that DEQ has done a remarkable job at really trying to look at how to move the state forward progressively on this area. So I think I'm proud to be part of that kind of group that's working in that way. I look forward to bringing my experience to the work of the committee and hope to help guide our continued progression in the county. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Hannah, can you do the same next?
Hi there, I'm Hannah Carlson. I am currently a student at Portland State University in the Masters of Public Administration program with a focus in natural resources. Before that, I was a master recycler, class 69, I think. And I'm a resident of Washington County as well. I just moved from Hillsborough, where I was born and raised, to Banks. So I'm still a Washington County resident, just a little more rural. I'm hoping to make a career out of caring about solid waste, recycling, composting, and all of that. I'm a big nerd for it, so I feel like I'm in the right place. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Okay, and Mayra, how do you pronounce your name?
Mayra.
Mayra. Okay, if you could go next.
Sí, bueno, pues mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Mayra Hernández. Pues he vivido, soy originalmente de México, he vivido en el estado de Oregon por 23 años y he tenido la experiencia de vivir en el área de Beaverton, Forest Grove y actualmente en Hillsborough, en el 97124 área. Actualmente trabajo con la comunidad latina proveyendo educación de salud y nutrición, y algo que me trajo a este espacio fue la experiencia de estar expuesta a conocer los servicios que ofrecía el condado. Y en el 2019 fui parte del primer entrenamiento latino del Grupo 73 para ser un promotor ambiental, o como en inglés se conoce como un maestro en reciclaje, donde el condado de Washington, Centro Cultural y Metro están colaborando. Antes de tomar este curso ya tenía mi pasión por el cuidado del medio ambiente, pero a través de este curso pude mejorar mi meta e identificar qué eran las cosas que me motivaban, como lo que viene siendo las 3 R's, el de reusar, reducir y reciclar. Y con esto pues pude hacerlo mejor. Entonces todo lo que he aprendido lo continúo promoviendo en la comunidad, y estoy muy contenta de estar aquí, representar y traer mi experiencia de la comunidad, y pues representando, ¿no?, donde vivo y donde me desenvuelvo mejor. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Okay, Tom, you want to do the updates, please?
Sure, thank you, Ken. And thank you everybody for the extended introductions, and welcome to Mayra, Hannah, and Pete. We're excited to have you all here and have a full committee again as we move into 2022. So we start off, the next item on the agenda is some quick program updates from the Solid Waste and Recycling Division. I have a couple things here on my list. I'm not going to try to dwell on them too long, but one as an announcement that we have a new staff member who has joined the Solid Waste Division as our communications lead for our Education Outreach Work Group. That is Doris Gonzalez, and Doris is joining us actually from Epson. She was previously at Epson in environmental health and safety, working in the kind of sustainability work for Epson Portland here in Hillsborough. They've done some great work over the years. Have been a leader in the corporate side in the high-tech industry, kind of leading some collaborative peer spaces and really doing some great work over there in terms of their corporate sustainability program. So we're really excited to have Doris join our team. She's bilingual English, Spanish as well. So it's going to be a great opportunity for us to have someone in a lead communications role that has the ability and the skills to be bilingual and help us kind of make sure that we're meeting the needs of the Spanish speaking community as well as the English speaking community. So we're really excited about that. Next update, it's budget season for us. It seems super crazy. We plan budgets years in advance, seemingly. So we're now planning our budget for fiscal year 22-23. So that budget year starts on July 1st of 2022. This year, the county is introducing a new budget equity tool, which is a new process to the county, and it's being implemented across the county. And it's kind of a narrative report that is amended to the budget requests from each organizational unit, each division within the county, that kind of talks through what types of data sources we're using to ensure that our programs, we understand who's accessing our programs and who our programs are intended to serve, what communities interests what community groups we work with, so that we know that we're speaking to community, thinking about our access services. So how do we know that we're providing access to our services? How much funds are we dedicating to interpretation and translation services and all those kinds of things. So it's a new exercise for the county. We're pretty excited about the opportunity to really start documenting and sharing some of the work we've been doing for a long time in the solid waste division. And so it's going to be a new journey for us as a team on that end. Another next topic, the business food scraps requirement that you all heard and advised on now probably 3 years ago. Was and approved by the board in 2019. It was scheduled to go in effect in March of 2020, but had since been delayed because of the COVID pandemic. It was delayed 2 years to March 31st of 2022, which is coming right up in terms of our planning cycles. So we are anticipating that we are a go to implement this new requirement for businesses that generate large amounts of food starting in March of 2022. This is also going to come with a new position for the business recycling outreach team. And that position is going to be dedicated to supporting and providing technical assistance to large food waste generating businesses. This also is connected to the bundled food rate that we took action on this last rate review. So you might remember part of the rate review package was making food scraps part of regular garbage service. And that rate goes into effect in April 1st of 2022. So the end of March, beginning of April is going to be some big work and a big initiative and for food scraps in the business community. We're also working to gear up for our 2022 rate review year, getting our detailed cost reports ready, trying to make sure that we have all of our processes in place, talking about our budget timelines, our rate review timelines, I'm sorry, they mix together budgets and rates to me. We received some feedback from community members and commissioners last year that we could have done a better job communicating about the rate increases. They were, you might recall, a pretty hefty rate increase, I think 12% for the residential sector. And a lot of community members received their rate increase notices after the increase went into effect July 1st. So we got some feedback from community members and some of our commissioners that was challenging and they weren't really appreciative of that. So we're working on a new timeline this year and we're considering pushing the rate increase effective August 1st and staying on the same timeline so that we can ensure that rates do not go into effect before people know about it. And we can provide 30 days notice to those that are being impacted by a rate increase. That's also the end of the calendar year. We're preparing to do some Opportunity to Recycle Act reporting that we report up through Metro to DEQ. Many of the actions that we do through our education work we're doing them because they're required by state law. So the education outreach team is really working hard right now to get reports ready and together on behalf of all of our cooperative cities. So we have about 10 reports that we will be submitting at the end of the year here, kind of documenting the work we're doing in the cities to ensure that those cities are meeting the Opportunity to Recycle Act. And then lastly, just we've been spending a lot of time talking about and learning more about the expanded recycling services work. And that's on the agenda item here as our presentation. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it in the updates, and I will go ahead and end it there.
Thank you very much, Tom. Erin, has anybody indicated they would like to oral communicate with us, which is the next thing on the agenda. And for those of you who are off in the waiting room or whatever, or in another room, we no longer have a sign-up sheet at the back of the room. So you need to raise your hand or send a chat in saying you would like to say something. And we have another oral communication at the end of the meeting. So this is not your only opportunity. Erin?
So I don't see anybody in the attendee pool, and we do have a few this evening, but Sue does have her hand raised at this time.
Oh, okay, and so does Victor. I don't know why Victor's hand. No, that's my computer. Sorry. So, who has a comment? A question?
Go ahead, Sue.
Sue Shade. Okay, Sue, go ahead. You're on.
Sue always has a question. No, it's really clarification because I went back through the rate schedules in the information that we received when the new rates for unincorporated Washington County came out. There were two schedules, one that was July 1, I think it was July 1, and then the other one was April 1. And I think it's to reflect the bundled rate that includes food. But I don't see any change in the dollar amounts on the two schedules.
Erin, you might be able to speak to it better than me even. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So what's going to happen is on April 1st, we will take down that individual food scrap rate that goes away. And so commercial rate payers will pay that bundled rate. So the new rate sheet will go up reflecting the fact that on April 1st, your bundle rate is going to include the food scraps, your recycling, and your regular garbage service all in one.
Okay, I just didn't know, well, where did it go? So
yeah, so you'll see that implementation officially happen on April 1st with the corrected rate sheets go up.
Okay,
and the garbage rates don't change. They were already changed in July of last year or this year. But the section that has the cost center for food scraps will just disappear essentially, and there'll be a note on the top that says food scraps are now included in garbage service.
And those rate schedules will change.
Yeah.
Reflective.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the expanded recycling collection services. Who's handling that, Tom?
I will give this presentation tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint. Make sure everybody can see it.
There we go.
Can you see it? Yep. Okay. All right. Can you see do you see the presentation or the notes version?
Notes.
Presentation.
There we go.
Now you're good.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm figuring out which screen I need to look at. All right, so thank you everybody. This evening we're gonna go ahead and give you all an update and look for some input and feedback to help guide the decision-making process for considering an expanded recycling services program. So we've done some work. Staff has been doing some work since the decision of the committee in late September to deny the exemption request that was provided or submitted by Ridwell Inc. for a similar service program. So we're working to kind of respond to the community demand and really figure out how we're going to approach it going forward. So there's 3 policy questions that we're really asking y'all for feedback on and consideration for. These questions and this feedback will help inform the proposal that goes forward to the Board of Commissioners. Your committee, as you might recall, the primary function is advising the Board of Commissioners. So we're looking for your feedback and input as we build this program and lay it out. And after the committee has some opportunity to give us guidance and advice, we will be taking that forward to the Board of Commissioners and talking to them in early 2022 about these programs as well. So the 3 questions, the first one really is, I think is the highest question is, should the county provide an opportunity for community members in the unincorporated areas of the county to have these recyclable materials collected? We're talking about materials beyond the mixed recycling right now. And then second policy question is really, how should that service be overseen by the county and should it be fully regulated? And then what program elements would your committee like to see included in any program design? So there's an opportunity for input there to help guide the decision making. So I want to start out talking a little bit about what's recyclable and what's in the mix, because I think this is a big point of confusion that we have with a lot of community members. In our education programs have been working really hard to kind of talk about what's recyclable and what's in the mixed recycling. And oftentimes those, for ease of language, you'll see something that says not recyclable, or this is not recyclable. And it's pointing at plastic film, for example. That's not technically true. Plastic film is recyclable, but it's not recyclable in our mixed recycling program. So there's some nuances here, and we've always struggled with contamination in the recycling stream. And a lot of that is from folks that are recycling things that are technically, quote unquote, recyclable, but they're not included in the mixed recycling program. The definition of recycling in our administrative rules means the process by which solid waste materials are transformed into new products in a manner that the original products lose their identity. So we're not talking about reuse, where the product remains the same thing and it gets reused again as in its same shape or form. But we're talking about products, what we put in our bin, and they might get shredded up and turned into pellets and sent to a new facility and melted down and blown up into a new form or shape. And that's kind of the process for plastics recycling. So really, that's what recycling means. It doesn't mean that putting something in the blue bin is not recycling. It's really that process of changing it from one material and turning it into a new material. And so why, and the next question really is, why are some things on the list and some things are not? So why do we choose what goes in the mixed recycling and what does not? There's lots of reasons and there's lots of factors, and these are really hard to communicate. And we often get into this with community members that are really concerned or think that we're underserving or not including things that we should in the recycling system. First thing is that it has to have a really strong end market. And that means there has to be a place for it to go. If we collect something that is technically or technologically or feasibly recyclable, and we pull it out of the waste stream and we send it to Vinod over at Far West Recycling, and he doesn't have a place to send it, it's not going to get recycled. That's how the system works. It is a commodities market. These are feedstocks that go to manufacturing processes, and they are used to create new products. And if there's not a strong end market, we can't recycle it. So that's really the number one thing.
Okay, Tom.
Yep.
I want to mention that over the years, we've discovered that in addition to being a market, it is highly changeable. And so things for which there was a strong end market suddenly had no more end market. And so people stopped taking newsprint, and then they started taking it again. China stopped taking a whole host of things, and then some of them have been, other people have stepped in and started to take them, but some things still aren't. So it's a dynamic that is constantly changing. It's not something that seems to be set in stone. And the end market, which impacts the haulers and people like Vinod seriously, needs to be acknowledged as being flexible, and you know, what was recyclable last year may not be recyclable under the normal form now.
Yeah, Ken, that's a really good point. And that really speaks to the strength, and another word that is used a lot is resiliency of end markets. Lots of materials, you know, what's these paper, for example, there's lots of end markets. There's end markets overseas, there's domestic markets, there's all kinds of markets. And if one goes away, we don't have to take paper out of our mixed recycling stream because there's another one that can pick up the slack. So it's a resilient market. There's more than one outlet. So a lot of the things, all the things I would say, and Vinod probably speaks to this better than anyone, a lot of everything we're collecting in the mixed recycling has many markets, has many facilities or recyclers that are hungry for that material, because it's a commodity that has value, and it's used in a lot of product manufacturing. If it's a material that has a single market, that's a sketchy material. And if we don't want to put something in the mixed recycling bin and next week have to pull it out because the market has gone away. And that's why a lot of these things that we're talking about are not necessarily the mixed recycling. Vinod, do you want to speak to that a little bit more, maybe?
I think, I'm not sure where you got your why it's on the list, but it looks remarkably similar to what was produced for the Bill 582. So that, you know, what happened with China is that went away. It was a supply and demand issue. So that was a big scramble, was to find the new homes that had the capacity for it. There were still people that wanted it, but they were overburned with it. And then the market crashed so far that the value of it went upside down and didn't cover the processing costs. So that's why you heard some areas saying, hey, we're not going to recycle this anymore. It's just going to cost us too much to do it. That didn't happen in the metro region, but further out where they had cost to get things in. But yeah, the core materials, the bottle grades and the tin and aluminum and paper have pretty solid markets. But when you get into something like film, it has a good market, but it's sort of one market, typically going back into like plastic lumber. And then the other side of that is it doesn't sort out of the systems very well. It gets lost and goes different places and wraps up. So if that helps, there's reasons why things aren't in the mix. Something that's recyclable like film, or a computer is very recyclable, but you wouldn't want it at curbside, so something like that. So there's things that it depends on how you can get it out of the system too.
Yeah, thanks, Vinod. That's all. Appreciate that. And like that's the second bullet point, like you just mentioned, you can separate it from other materials. I think film is a great one of those examples. When plastic film or plastic bags get sent to the material recovery facility, it wraps around the equipment and it can't get separated from the materials as easily as other.
And I would just add on that if it's not, the market doesn't want film that's been commingled with other materials either. They want to source separated and clean and dry. If you put it in a bin, they commingled, it doesn't necessarily come out as clean as they want it. So.
Yeah, thank you. Then the next item there, it doesn't impact sorting equipment. So we have the technology to separate it and it doesn't damage sorting equipment or gum up the system. I think another really important one is it makes environmental sense. So we haven't necessarily had the capacity historically to really do a full life cycle analysis on every item that we recycle, because recycling has often been an economical equation. So if the economics make sense, we should do it. If they don't make sense, we should not. And that kind of speaks to what Vinod was saying. When the economics went upside down, many jurisdictions outside of the metro area stopped recycling some items because it didn't economically make sense anymore. But we fundamentally believe that we're recycling because it's good for the environment and we're doing it for environmental reasons. So we chose in the metro region to increase costs to pay for those new processing costs. There's enough materials to sort for is another important part. We don't want to ask our recovery facilities to sort out materials that are, say, 0.2% of the waste stream, because there's not enough volume for them to really aggregate and successfully sort out and send off to markets. And then the ability for generators to identify and prepare materials properly is important as well. Being able to communicate with community members about what is recyclable in the mixed recycling, what can be included, what cannot be included, why. Those are important considerations when we're thinking about what's on the list and what's not. And this graphic here really is just kind of helping show what we're talking about here. We got recyclable is a larger category than what's in the mixed recycling. And there's lots of reasons for that. It's not because we hate plastic film and styrofoam. So let's look at the waste stream a little bit. This is the waste stream in unincorporated Washington County. And on the pie graph shows the tons of materials collected from the different sectors that we manage from the rate perspective. So we manage commercial, Dropbox, and residential. Multifamily is in the commercial waste stream because it's considered a commercial account. So it gets a little tricky when we're trying to parse out multifamily tonnage and waste composition, but residential is very clean and easy for us to evaluate and look at as a waste stream. And then Dropbox is Dropboxes or compactors that are at large generators or construction projects or demolition debris. In unincorporated Washington County, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. The residential waste stream is by and large the largest segment of our waste stream. 66% of the tonnage collected out of unincorporated Washington County comes from the residential sector. We're a largely suburban area. Unincorporated Washington County is has less business corridors and less dense business community than the city of Hillsborough or the city of Beaverton does. So this pie graph would look very different. This is Aloha, north of 26, the Bethany area, mostly residential communities and residential customers. we kind of zoom out on the garbage, on the residential waste stream, and kind of looking at what is collected out of the residential waste stream. 56% of what the garbage haulers pick up from residents is garbage. 23% is recycling, and 21% is yard debris. And you can see those tonnage figures there. So then we wanted to really break down the list of the potential expanded recycling categories in the residential waste stream, and kind of get a picture of what it is we're really talking about when we're talking about these expanded recycling categories. These 6 categories are some of the common ones that we hear a lot about from folks, and we wanted to really look at and research and learn more about. So plastic film is a big one. I can tell you, my household, there's a lot of plastic film in our waste stream. We have everything seems to be wrapped in plastic these days, toilet paper, water bottles, mailers from Amazon, everything comes wrapped in plastic, it seems like these days. So plastic is also light. So it's important to note that these figures are based on weight. These are weight metrics. So plastic film is about 1.4% of what's in our residential garbage. And these are residential tonnage figures. And if we took that 1.4% and applied that to our 51,000 tons of garbage that we collect annually, that's about 752 tons of plastic film. That's not insignificant. That's quite a bit of plastic film, but it's not a huge category like food waste, which I point out at the bottom just to demonstrate the magnitude. Textiles is surprising to me a little bit. There's a lot of textiles in our waste stream. About 3.68% of our residential waste stream is textiles. So that's old clothing or fabrics or things that people are throwing into the garbage. And that is 1,800 tons a year. That actually surprised me when I saw it because it's a pretty large quantity. Batteries are a small quantity, but mighty, I would say. And Vinod, if anybody could speak to the danger of batteries in our waste stream. They often can start fires in collection trucks. We had a truck last year, a truck in Bethany, a waste management truck that was collecting mixed recycling en route. And we think it was a greeting card that sings when you open it that started a fire in the back of the truck, and they dumped the load in the middle of the road in Bethany. And now we have a burning, smoldering load of recycling in the middle of the road, and we have to figure out how to get it. That's the best thing they could have done. They could have lost the truck if that fire went up. And Vinod, do you want to?
That's a really good example of something that doesn't belong in any cart, because they burn garbage trucks, they can start landfill fires, they burn recycling facilities. They're a huge problem for MRFs everywhere. I think I might have mentioned this last time. Is we were actually contacted by a MRF in Australia because they're like, "How do you guys handle this?" And we're like, "We just have to be hyper vigilant and train our people to be aware of any smoke and things like that." But yeah, they don't lend themselves to commingling.
So is there any way that we are in a position, or the state of Oregon is in a position, to mandate that cards with batteries in them come with a notice that says, hazmat, do not put it in the waste stream?
Some of them do have a little cart with a slash in it, but I think I think some of that's just misfeasance where people, it's a paper card, they don't think about it and throw it out. And then there's other times where people want to recycle and they put the computer battery or something in there, and the lithium ions are the ones that really spark and catch fire.
Yeah, and we already know that people who want to recycle will read the rules and take it to a recycle thing, and the people who don't will toss it out of their car window as they're driving down the road. I mean, we have both populations out there.
Did we lose Tom?
I don't see him in any of my pictures.
He's gone from the Brady grid.
And I'm not even, I don't have the presentation up, so I can't.
No, the presentation.
We lost him. Kathy, do you have the presentation? I don't know that I have a copy.
I have it
talk
up.
About materials some more.
Tom just sent me a chat and said he got dropped and he's trying to get back on. So maybe a couple of minutes and we'll see if he does. And in the meantime, I'll look for it.
Okay, I have it up on mine. Can I share my screen?
I have it up too.
I don't see a share button though.
It's bottom in the middle.
I have a share screen button.
I can share my screen as well, yeah.
Okay, well, anybody who has it up, we're on, what is it, slide 6, that has a matrix of columns with plastic film, batteries, light bulbs, plastic containers, and on the other side, what the current options are and the portion of the waste stream. So if you can go to that, it's after the slide that Tom was on. So, and one of you who has it up, share it, please.
So Tom is still trying. So maybe if someone wants to share it, I can move us along. I guess the first thing I would say is, does anyone have any questions or comments from what we've talked about so far?
It's Sandra put it up.
Good, thank you, Sandra. Okay, so that's the next screen.
I'm not sure how I did it, but
that's okay.
Can you make it a full screen, Sandra? Yeah,
at all? Is that
I see Tom getting back in.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I had internet died.
Thanks, Tom. I was going to wing it.
Can I stop? Should I stop then?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Let me go back to screen share. I apologize about that. I don't know what happened. I noticed everyone froze, and I know I was talking a lot, but. Can you see presentation now? Again? Yeah, okay. All right, sorry about that. Let's pick back up. So we were talking about batteries when I left. I don't know what you talked about when I was gone, but I'm sure we know about batteries. They're bad. Vinod doesn't like them. MRFs, they're dangerous. They start fires. Light bulbs, 0.1% of the waste stream. This is another segment of the waste stream that really is, there's not many of them. And we're really talking about compact fluorescents here. Incandescent bulbs, which are the old school light bulbs, are not recyclable. They're just garbage. There's no recovery of those. So we're not really evaluating those in waste sorts. And LEDs are newer onto the scene, and there are not very many of them in the waste stream. They last a long time. And they are not recyclable as well because of the way they're built. They maybe technically are, but there's not really a good recycling outlet for them. CFLs do.
People do recycle them, but there's very little material because it's mostly plastic and a little wire, and sometimes the prongs or something on there. There is a market for them, but.
Thanks, Vinod. And compact fluorescents are important not to put in the waste stream. They do contain small amounts of mercury, which is a pretty hazardous toxic chemical. So those are important materials. Very few in the waste stream. Clamshells, number one, clamshells is a big topic. It's a big category. We hear a lot about clamshells. They're very confusing. A lot of people want to recycle them. They're stamped with the recycling symbol. A lot of them end up in the recycling roll cart. They are about 0.14% of the waste stream, which is actually less than I would have anticipated. This data is now maybe 2.5 years old, so I would expect that they are becoming a larger part of the waste stream as more and more of that type of packaging is being inserted into our grocery stores and used by manufacturers.
So Tom, yep. City of Portland outlawed some kinds of plastic clamshells. So
styrofoam.
Styrofoam in particular. Did that have an impact on that, or do we still get the transparent clamshells are styrene, same stuff, it's just a different processing?
Yeah, so they banned polystyrene food service like packaging. So the styrofoam white clamshell is what they have banned, and it's been a while. I'm not sure how effective that is. There was some talk about that a couple of years ago, and it was some really interesting work done. I think the DEQ helped do some work and really kind of studying the life cycle analysis impact of that. There's not a very good alternative. Moving to plastic clamshells is not necessarily better for the environment, and moving to those fiber, quote unquote, what would be advertised as compostable food serviceware is also not a good alternative. So some of those efforts were dropped because of the alternative is not clear.
Okay.
The next category we hear a lot about, people really despise, and when I get a big package with a lot of it, it's really hard to get rid of, is the block styrofoam. Again, this is really important to remember. We're talking about by weight here, and I think you know, a 40-yard drop box full of styrofoam weighs a couple 100 pounds.
Right.
So it's a very light, it's air mostly, and it is an annoying product, and it's really challenging to dispose of. You could buy a TV and you could fill your whole garbage can up with the styrofoam from that TV. So I know that's something we hear a lot about from community members, but it's by weight, it's a pretty small segment of their waste stream as well. And so the total of these 6 materials is about 5.5% of what's in the garbage. And I put this here for illustrative purposes when we're talking about food. Food is the last big chunk of material that is in our garbage still. And we're estimating about 27% of what's in the garbage is food scraps. So trimmings, peels, non-edible foods, and then food waste, which would be food that has spoiled or was once edible that didn't get eaten. So that's a lot of waste materials. Again, this is important to remember, we're talking weight. Food is heavy, dense, so it weighs a lot, but it is a big chunk of what's in the waste stream. So zooming a little bit further in on these materials, I'm repeating the figures below and what's happening with them today, and kind of really digging into these expanded categories. Plastic film and plastic bags. Grocery stores are collecting these. I would say, if not all, most near the entrance, they collect these this film in near the entrance of grocery stores. So Fred Meyer's and Safeways, you'll see these collection points. Recycling depots, I don't know if there's very many of them right now. Vinod, would you say there are not very many depots that are collecting it?
I don't know of any that are currently taking film. I think some people have looked at it. You do need an attendant if you're going to do something like that depot, because they get contaminated quickly.
Yeah.
We used to, a long time ago, we used to have a market for that, but there's not a good enough market to support it now.
And Vinod earlier mentioned one market for film. I'm pretty sure almost all of the film collected in the Northwest is being sent to Trex decks in Nevada and being turned into composite lumber. It is a market that's been around for a long time, and you can correct me here if I'm wrong on some of these market things, Vinod. And I think it's a pretty strong market, but it is a single market, and it has low tolerance for contamination.
Yeah, they have low tolerance for contamination, and moisture is an issue for them. I have heard some rumblings that they are looking at film that comes out of the MRFs too. They're experimenting with what their threshold is, but it's going to be a pretty pure product. They take the number 2 and the 4 plastic. So like a number 2 bag is your kind of your crinkly bag at the grocery store, and the number 4 is typically the really stretchy kind of like produce bag.
Thanks, Vinod. And please chime in on these materials. I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the markets, but you're the expert on this side of it. Totally. Batteries. Most of the batteries in our households are these alkaline AA, AAA batteries that power our remotes. And in my household, my 7-year-old's game controllers. Right now, there's outlets, Metro Hazardous Waste, Household Hazardous Waste Program collects batteries. And there's also retailers like Batteries Plus Bulbs or Home Depot that will take batteries back from community members. Some of those charge. There's a couple, $1 per pound or $5 a pound, or there's a small charge at some of those places like Batteries Plus Bulbs. My understanding, and Vinod, maybe you can speak to this a little bit more if you know, many of the alkaline household batteries are not necessarily getting recycled. What they're really capturing is the lithium ion and the rechargeable batteries that have more precious metals in them. Is that accurate?
That's true. As far as I know, they're recycling, because the other markets that take them are typically like E-Steward certified or ISO certified or R2 certified. So they do have downstream restrictions. They can't just grab something and throw it away. They have to say, we collected this, and then this is where it's going. And you get like, at least with R2, because our facility is R2 in Tualatin, and that's they audit it once a year, and they want to know where your stuff went and how it was disposed of and what the end of life is. So there are markets, and that ones are usually a charge item. Sometimes of the lithium ions and the nickel hybrids and things have a positive value, but it's still a commodity. So
okay, thanks. Light bulbs, so really focusing in on CFL bulbs here right now, currently Metro's Household Hazardous Waste Facility, or again, Batteries Plus Bulbs will take these back from community members, and Home Depot and some of those big box stores are also taking CFLs back. Those materials are at least processed responsibly through processors like Ecolights Northwest or Total Reclaim, or URT, which is a recycler in Clackamas County. Plastic #1 clamshells. There is no option right now that we're aware of in the metro region that is collecting these at drop off. I think New Seasons may be considering bringing them back to their grocery stores.
I think they are, and I know James is, and Ridwell's taking them. Yeah, I think it's all the same market it's going into.
Yeah, and that material, can you describe the market for the clamshell?
The one I know about is they were accepting them in California, but I think that's dried up a little bit, and they're going south of Texas right now, and because they're able to. The thing with clamshells is, although it's a #1 plastic like a bottle, because the way it's formed, they shatter and they break up when they get ground up for a bottle. So they can't, and then they have different viscosity and different melt points, so they can't be mixed with the bottle. So it's got to be its own market. And there's people looking at it, so I think it's growing. And then the other side is that's probably going to come up too. When you look at life cycle, and which recycling is you're approved of, is you have chemical or advanced recycling, which is a different process than the mechanical breakdown and remelt.
Yeah, thanks, Vinod. And then styrofoam, are everybody's favorite. There's the main outlet, for at least here regionally, is Agilix in Tigard, and there's a facility there. They are a chemical recycler, so they are either breaking the polystyrene down to a styrene monomer that is being reused for new polystyrene manufacturing, or I think they might be doing plastics to fuel as well, depending on the value of the oil markets, essentially, the value of the barrel. And then the other category here is textiles. Really reuse or donation, I think, is where most of that is going. Goodwill happens to be, collects a lot of materials, and a lot of it is not necessarily reusable, but they collect it. And so I think a lot of the textiles that are being diverted are heading to those types of reuse locations. You also see the boxes in the parking lot at the church or the shopping center, and those other kind of reuse type markets. And then food here again, there's no outlet for food for community members. There's no place to take a bucket of compost and drop off your food scraps, self-haul. So now let's move a little bit, shift gears a little bit to talk about regulatory approvals and these expanded recycling services and these materials. So there's a variety of ways for local governments to bring a service like access to expanded recycling services into a community. And I'm going to kind of highlight 4 different options, I'm going to call them, or different approaches. The first one is an exemption. So right now in Washington County, as we've talked about for the last 6 months, in order to collect solid waste materials, which these materials are solid waste materials for compensation, they have to have a certificate granted by the Board of Commissioners. There could be an exemption for that type of activity. So the Board of Commissioners, our code has that exemption clause in it. And as you know, Ridwell applied for that exemption, and we, this committee decided that was not something you were all comfortable with providing. So that is an option, an opportunity for any jurisdiction. The city of Portland actually changed its code to authorize an exemption for those types of collection activities. And that means that it's not regulated. And I know that was a lot of the concern. What's the accountability for the material, and where is it going, and what are the standards and practices, and what are they charging for them? None of that is overseen or regulated by the government in an exemption approach. Kind of another option on the scale of from fully regulated to lightly regulated is maybe a limited recycling registration or a permit. So instead of a full-blown franchise with a designated service area or a regulated monopoly, there could be a recycling permit where the government issues a permit to a service provider and says, you are allowed to do X, Y, and Z with this permit. That's also not something that's embedded in Washington County's code. It's not something that has ever been in Washington County's solid waste collection code, and it would be a code change type activity if that was something that the county decided to pursue. Another option could be a new franchise or certificate category. So there could be the ability for the county to carve out different types of activities for different types of franchises or certificates. Again, that's not something that's in the code right now. There is these limited purpose and temporary certificate clauses that essentially say if current providers are not or are unable to do something, then the county may certificate it or grant those rights to another provider to do those services. So it's kind of there, but it's not really applies to the current situation. And then there's another option for the county to fully regulate and develop a hauler collection program. So a collection program that would be built into our current regulatory structure, or that could be subcontracted out to service providers. This really means that we would design a program and we would tell our certificate holders, this is now part of the county's solid waste regulated solid waste collection system. So you need to provide this service, and they could choose to provide that service themselves or subcontract that out to another provider. Similar to right now, medical waste collection, for example, is subcontracted through the certificate holders to fewer providers, and not everybody's doing their own medical waste collection. And this is a no code change. This is kind of using the current rules and regulations we have and applying them to the situation and circumstances. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some engagement we've done to date to kind of seek input, kind of like what we're doing here today with you all, and really trying to coordinate and talk about how we move forward with this approach. So we have been working with Beaverton and Hillsborough. They are important jurisdictions in Washington County. They are the two largest cities, and they would kind of create the whole upper northern half of the county. Beaverton and Hillsborough are very interested in working alongside us to kind of figure out a solution to this challenge and really trying to understand the best pathway forward. I will say that Beaverton staff have received direction from their council to explore and develop what we're calling option A up above, is kind of building a program within their hauler franchise system. We've also done some engagement with the Washington County Hauler Association. We've been having multiple meetings with the Haulers Association, trying to understand what's the capabilities, what would a service look like, what materials could they collect, where are their markets, where would they take materials, how would they collect those materials. So we're really trying to unpack the proposal they sent us back in April, you might recall, and really trying to dig deep and understand how that proposal would really be implemented on the ground and what it would look like and how we could roll that into a regulatory structure and make rules around it. We've also been soliciting community member feedback and input. We've sent out a survey to community members, kind of designed to engage folks and ask them if they're interested in a service for expanded recycling services. We wanted to know what type of materials they were interested in having collected or recycled. And we asked them where they lived. Do they live in a multifamily community? Do they live in single family homes? Which city or jurisdiction did they live in? And how much would they be willing to pay? And then kind of some price ranges like $5 to $10 or $10 to $15 a month or $15 to $20, and trying to judge the likelihood of folks being interested in a service if the county offered it through its systems. We do have, the survey closes on December 17th, so it's not closed yet, but it's only been out there for about a week and a half, and we got a report this afternoon at about 5 that we have almost 1,700 responses, which is pretty outstanding, I have to say. We're really impressed with that. And I think 68% of the respondents said yes, they would take a service like this, and 29% said maybe they would, and only 6% of the respondents said they would not be interested in a service like this. So that's a pretty strong feedback, I would have to say, that we're getting. I know that there's some grains of salt we have to consider, you know, the type of folks that respond to a survey from the local government garbage people might be really interested in garbage more than the average community member, but those results are pretty significant. And I think that shows that there's a lot of interest out there. We don't have the full kind of breakdown yet. We will share that with you when we get it. The number one material that people were interested in was plastic film. And then I think followed by batteries was the second one. Pete, do you have a question?
Yeah, was the survey a random selection representing the community, or is it just a, hey, if you're interested, fill this thing out?
Yes, the latter, and that's why I think when I was saying we really need to take the results with a grain of salt. Part of the motivation for doing the survey really too was to help kind of get some community input on if there is a program, how it would be designed, what materials would be focused on. And it's important to get those that are energized about the program to give us some feedback. And then also maybe gauging the level of interest. So if we're going to be getting into kind of estimating how much a program costs, we can use some of that information to project how many people might sign up for such a service. But that's a really good point, Pete, and I think it's important to note.
Yeah, and where is the survey available?
So on our website, there's a hot topics page that is on the left-hand nav that you'll see if you go to WashingtonCountyRecycles.com. We also promoted it on Facebook. We send it out through some of our newsletters, and I think the Garbage and Recycling Day application also did some push notices to current customers, letting them know that there's an opportunity to give some feedback on services. And we did join in partnership with Beaverton and Hillsborough. So they're very interested in what feedback from their community members and all community members as well. So they co-branded the survey with us, and we're kind of launching it as a co-proctored survey with the cities of Beaverton and Hillsborough. We're also working with our Promotores Ambientales group with the Centro Cultural that is a community design master recycler course. And Ricardo Palazuelos on our team is our community engagement expert, and he's working with that group to kind of co-design and community design some input that we could receive from that community and those advocates as well about what a program might look like and what some of the interests are in a program like that. So next, I'm going to step into what our recommended approach is and share with you what we're thinking as staff. So we do feel that it's important to respond to community interest and provide an opportunity for expanded recycling services. So this is staff's answer to the first policy question. We had a lot of feedback. You all might remember we had, I think, over 50 people show up to a public hearing for this committee, which was nothing like we've ever seen before. So there's clearly a whole lot of interest out there on this topic. And just the initial results from the survey are, I think, reinforcing that there's a lot of community interest and a lot of folks are really excited and energized about this. So we feel it's important to give us that, to share that opportunity and explore how we can meet that need, that demand. Staff are recommending that and planning that we should include such a collection service in the existing regulatory framework. We did do a lot of work up front, and we considered an exemption request, and ultimately that was not approved for a variety of reasons. And I think they were good reasons, alignment with the regional waste plan. There were some concerns about driver and employment practices. There were concerns about a transparency for how materials were handled. There was concerns about pricing and promotion and how that material is priced. And just those are all things that if we keep a material and a system inside of our regulatory program, that the county and in turn the Board of Commissioners and this committee has influence over how do we manage that and how do we think it should be operated. And we also are, we are confident after talking a lot with our garbage haulers that they're up to it. We're confident that this is something they can do. There's a couple models out there in Seattle. There's a model that's similar to this that their franchised service providers are operating. And actually in Clark County, there's Waste Connections is operating a program very similar to this. This is not something that's impossible, and we think they have the capability to do it. And also it doesn't require code change, which is a whole nother process. And we feel that if we're working inside of the regulatory system, that we should work within what the code says and work through that. We're also, our other recommendation to really the third practice is really we want to keep soliciting input and feedback from the committee. That's what we're here tonight to talk to you all about. Community members, we do think it's important that we design a program that the community wants, and we're not just designing a program that looks like Ridwell's, for lack of a better word. We should design what our community wants, and it might look a little bit different, and it might operate a little bit differently, and it might meet a little bit of a different need. And really wanted to talk through some of those service component elements. So that is staff's recommendations, and really I'm kind of jumping back here to the policy questions and really looking for a discussion here and some input and seeing if you all think staff's on the right direction and going forward. Our plan is to continue this work and hopefully come back to the committee in January and maybe have a hard proposal that we could seek some action on. And then we would begin engaging the Board of Commissioners as a next step because it would require changing the administrative rules to add new program elements and also adopting rates that would be combined with a service like this. And here are a few prompts, just kind of thinking about some program elements that the committee would be interested in influencing and talking about. There's this concept about curbside versus doorstep. Those are two different types of services. They're not mutually exclusive, but they are important to consider when you're developing a program like this. Talking about the types of materials that are included, the pricing structure, what that looks like and what's reasonable. Reuse, I think, is something that we are really want to make sure that we don't lose track of and we pay attention to. And then service availability, and really like who in this, we're asking who gets to have access to this service. So I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can talk a little bit better and rely on that as stop share. There it is. All right, are we back? Cool. Sorry for that long-winded presentation, but I hope that was helpful, and I'm curious if there's any feedback from you all. So I would open it up now for questions, discussions, conversation. Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of this, but there's also a service called James Recycling Service, and they do something similar to Ridwell. It's like a very small time sort of thing, but has been really popular, I guess, with my extended network. And so if we were looking into methods or business practices of how the companies are doing it, like you said, not exactly to model what a company is already doing, but to look at the options and service levels. That is another one, like a competitor, I guess, to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. That's a good point. James does collect different materials. They do a lot of plastics, and I believe they take those plastics to Denton Plastics, which is a local recycler. I know Far West Recycling has done a lot of work with James in the past on collection events and things like that. So we're very aware of James Recycling. We engaged Kathy, which is James' mom, who kind of manages the business early on in the process in the exemption debate. And Kathy informed us that they were not interested in coming into Washington County and doing a curbside collection program, that they were going to really focus on those collection events. And we support James on those events and would like to continue to do so. But that's a really good point. They do a small scale collection program, I understand, in Southwest Portland. So thanks, Hannah, that's good. Any other questions, comments, feedback? How do you all think we're on the right track?
I always have an opinion, and I think it's critical that the county maintain or establish some kind of registration, entry, permission program, whether how we handle it in terms of whether it's a full franchise or something else. But I think we want to know who they are. We want to know that they are insured and that they're paying workman's comp, that they have those things covered, and that they're meeting the state's minimum wage laws, and that they have liability insurance, so that when one of their vehicles spills hazardous material all over the road, somebody is there with a deep pocket to pay for it, similar to what the insurance we require of our garbage haulers now, and some way of assuring that we know where the stuff is going downstream. We don't want to create a situation, as happened many years ago in New Jersey, where the mob was picking up solid waste, not liquid waste, and driving into the next municipality and dumping it down the storm drains. As public policy, that's terrible. So we need, I think, to keep our finger in the pie, whether we need a full franchise system. And the second thing that, beyond that, in terms of finance, is that they ought to be paying approximately what the haulers pay for oversight. So this is not a free service, but I think the public has the responsibility to monitor and maintain a level of service that we're happy with, to make sure things go where they need to go. Because if we just throw it open to the general public, we're going to get people doing things we don't like. I'm done.
Thanks. Pete, I see you have your hands up. Your hand.
I can put them both up if you want.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, a couple of questions, I guess. Tom, when you were doing the rapid, long presentation that you felt, like you had to get through everything, and you did a great job. I appreciate the effort. But one of the things I didn't quite get was when we were talking about the materials that might be chosen for such an endeavor. One of the factors that you said was important was that it make environmental sense. Can you talk a little bit more about how that determination of environmental sense, how you see that happening?
With like considering items for an expanded recycling services program, you're thinking, Pete?
Yes, that's
yeah, that's a really good question and a good point. I know we have done some work with the folks at DEQ, so David Alloway and Peter Caperna in the headquarters office have given us some assistance in that and really trying to understand what the benefit is, or the life cycle benefit, or the environmental benefit of capturing some of these materials. Plastic clamshells was a good one that was an example, and there was a lot of questions about whether driving truckloads of these clamshells down to, I think, Juarez, Mexico is where the facility is, would actually pay off, or if we're just driving them down there to make ourselves feel good about the practice of recycling them. It's about 1,600 miles each way, is my understanding, the truck trip. And the analysis that we got back from DQ is that it would, if it was over 40,000 miles, it would stop penciling out. So it does make sense. They could, I think, make the trip 9 times back and forth or something they came up with to really still be an environmentally positive action. Obviously, every time, the further you go, the smaller that margin gets, but that's an important part of it. The other materials we don't necessarily have very concrete data on, and it's something I think we need to do a little bit more research in. The one that has a lot of questions right now is styrofoam as well. There's some questions and concerns about the process of chemical recycling and what's the environmental benefit of that? And are we really doing good by taking our styrofoam to these chemical recyclers and creating fuel out of it? And I don't think there's a good answer, and I don't know if anybody has an answer to that. And so I think that's something that we would definitely consider in choosing what materials are going in. Some of the other ones, you know, I think we need to do some more work and some more research to really identify some of the answers to some of those other materials, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and as work we're doing, and I think it's evolving work, Pete. It's work that the state, like you know, I'm sure, that's very interested in doing more of and trying to really get to the bottom of it. And it's actually kind of fascinating because we're scrutinizing these expanded materials, and they're like 5% of our garbage stream. And then we don't even know the answer to those questions on a lot of what's in our mixed recycling, because those systems have evolved over time, and there's been a lot of assumptions baked into the environmental benefit of recycling those materials. So those are big questions that we need to answer for the whole system. And I think those questions will start getting answered when Senate Bill 582 starts moving and getting taking place or whatever.
Right. I guess that was the kind of follow-up to my question, is that there is this big effort, the Recycling Modernization Act effort, to define the statewide list of materials that are going to be recyclable. And might there be overlap between this program and what eventually equates out of that process? And does that, does it make it where we've got a separate system that then envelopes into the larger system, or at least partially does? And then along the same lines are my concerns about things like CFLs, from twofold. One, CFLs for the last 4 years have had virtually 0% of the market share. And so they are long lasting, but eventually they're going to disappear from the waste stream totally, because there just won't be any more left. And then related to that is Metro's work on trying to get a EPR system in place for household hazardous waste. And they've had a couple of turns at the legislature to try to make that happen. I think they're still motivated to try to make it happen. I know DEQ is interested in seeing EPR approaches for the difficult materials like that. So,
again, what does EPR stand for?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's extended producer responsibility. It's where the producer has some.
Okay, no, I know what that is, but
yeah, sure. It's similar to what the Recycling Modernization Act is based on. Is the producers will have some role, and with Metro's plan for household hazardous waste, producers would have some financial responsibility for handling these materials. So I think that, obviously we don't have the answers to that, but those are things that are going on out there. Yep. And I don't know, how nimble or flexible this program can be set up in order to adjust for those things. So that's another issue that I'd be concerned about.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Good points, Pete. And Kathy, do you want to speak to it, or?
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the mechanisms in order to, if we stay with a more fully regulated program is administrative rules. So it's all about how this program would be defined, set up in the rules. And what I would say is that if over time the list changes or expands, or there's additional or fewer, we would change the rules. And if they end up being part of your curbside, then you would fall under that rule as opposed to the expanded recycling rules. So that's sort of the regulatory mechanism to actually, along with rates, to actually implement this new program.
Yeah, and I think another important thing, Pete, we've been pretty involved in the conversation and study in Senate Bill 582 to understand what impact it might have. And some of these materials might come into the list, and that might put them in the mixed recycling. My understanding and what I've been told from DQ staff is that when we're talking about a statewide list, we're talking about the mixed recycling list.
Right.
So we're really talking about what's in the roll cart, right? And we're now out here talking about what could we possibly collect on the side of that. And so some of those materials might become program materials that go into the roll cart, and that'd be a great benefit that would provide more access to more community members, because it wouldn't be an add-on or boutique service like this that we're discussing would be. Sure. There's also, I think, something to consider is I know that industry will have responsibility for these materials, and industry will also be given direction essentially to say you can't just come in and disrupt what's in place. So if there's systems and processes and programs in place to capture some of these materials, you can't say, well, film, it's not in the roll cart, but no longer can you do it this way. We're going to collect them at grocery stores from the industry side of things. And so that actually is maybe some incentive for local governments to get ahead of it and to say, this is a way we want to manage some of these materials in our community. We want to give our communities the opportunity to do this. And we might be able to lure industry into helping support and fund some of those opportunities for those materials that don't belong in the carts or don't have the sorting technology. So I think it's really important. It's still 4.5 years away and probably 5 or 6 years away before we start seeing those things happen on the ground. But I think that's a really good feedback. And to what Kathy said, what's in this is less important than what the practice or process of collecting is, the operations. And I think this is an opportunity of a program that could evolve over time. We're really interested in reuse, and how does reuse play into this? Could we be, creating a new system that could allow us to kind of address reuse in the solid waste collection regulatory realm? Could we be developing partnerships with reuse organizations and identifying the types of things that could be reused more readily? And that would be a really cool opportunity to kind of build some of that into the regulated system.
Yeah, I think a good example of that happens in other parts of the country is the to-go boxes that have returnability at the curb, or in this case at the doorstep, or however the program's set up, so that it makes it much more convenient and more lucrative for folks to want to engage with that and bring stuff home in those containers.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, feedback?
I think I'm just echoing you, but when we discussed this, Pete, a long time ago, it was the reason, where Tom mentioned, there's a reason you don't put them in the curb, because it might be something that the market changes or evolves. And so it was, we actually asked, I believe it was Ridwell, we said, what happens if a market goes away? And they said, well, we would adapt. We would take that material out of that mix, or it's a little more flexible system than what's just in the curb. And so it's going to have to come with a lot of education too. Hey, this is just because we can take this doesn't mean it goes in the curb now. It's still, it has to be handled differently. So it's a little bit different than just saying the statewide list is like, hey, these are readily recyclable, easy to get out, easy to identify. And so that's why the statewide list would be there. And then this would be collection events or this type of service that's built in the system now. And so, and then again, I think I'm wrong, but the like Ken was saying, when we were discussing this over the last few months over summer, it was around equity and our people being held to the same standards, and training, the safety training, and all that stuff's being applied to the program. So if that helps. We talked about it ad nauseum, I think, over the summer. So, but yeah, flexibility is a feature.
Thanks, Vinod. And I think that's an important part. If we're going to do any program design, we are thinking like we can't have a regulatory scheme so rigid that we would have to go ask permission for the board if, say, the plastic market dried up and all suddenly Trek said, we don't want film anymore and we have a program. We need to have some release valves built into it to say, the director of the Health and Human Services can pause or change something if there's a market disruption like that, because we know we're talking now about things that are on the side that are more fragile, that are not as resilient, that might change more, with less notice, and we need to be able to react to that. And this is, I think, would be designed as something that could, and it wouldn't affect what goes in the base services and affect most of those customers.
And Pete, just a little bit more. I think when we talked about it, we were all in support of the idea. It was just how it gets implemented was the discussion.
Anyone else?
Has anybody requested making a comment? Erin? Or is there anything in the chat box or anything?
No, nothing in Q&A and no hands raised.
Okay, when do we anticipate having another meeting?
Well, it's a good question. Are we good with everybody? Ken, I think you have an obligation. If you need to peel out, you can please feel free to do that.
We got about 4 or 5 more minutes.
So please go ahead, Ken, and peel out. We can kind of facilitate the end of this
okay, great.
conversation.
By the way, for all of you, I have to go pick up a granddaughter at swimming practice and take her home.
That's more important than talking about expanded recycling services. So
see you guys later.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Ken.
I think Myra still had a question.
Yeah, Myra, I see your hand up.
Sí, tengo un comentario solamente para clarificar la información que viste en los porcentajes de basura, donde se dividió todo. ¿Esa información fue tomada en qué fechas?
The time frame?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Sí, ¿de dónde sacó la información de los porcentajes de cuánta basura se obtuvo ay, disculpa, lo que estaba en la gráfica, de los desechos?
Yeah, so there's a variety of data sources, and it can try to explain it, and I hope I'm correct, but I can double check with Heather Robinson, who helped me build it on our team. The pie graph that breaks down the different waste streams, so 66% residential, 17% commercial, 17% Dropbox, is from annual detailed cost reports from haulers. So that is 2020 data, and that is data we collect every year from the garbage haulers in the rate review process. And then the breakdown of the material waste composition, we would call it, is it's actually from 2016, which is now a little bit dated. And that was the last time the state DQ did a full waste comp study on the state's waste stream. And we purchased extra samples so that we could get a Washington County only snapshot of that. So it's a combination of data sets. That's why I kind of alluded to the clamshells came out surprisingly low to me. And I would think between 2016 and 2021, we've seen more clamshells on the market than we did 5 years ago. Does that answer your question?
Sí, y pues va a mi pregunta porque creo que para estas fechas, creo que la comunidad está comprando más en línea y está comprando más en los restaurantes comida para llevar, que está acumulando más basura. Entonces, me imagino que para estas fechas es mucho más grande lo que viene siendo todo lo de basura, inclusive hasta los desperdicios. Entonces, a eso iba mi comentario, porque estoy enterada acerca de la encuesta, acerca del servicio del reciclaje, de lo que no podemos tener en el reciclaje mixto. Y pues de mi punto de vista, personas con las que he hablado están a favor. quieren tener esto porque tienen mucha basura en su casa, incluyendo lo que dices, el plástico de la comida para llevar o donde vienen las ensaladas, todo ese tipo de basura que no pueden reciclar. Ellos quieren sacarlo de la casa, pero quieren hacerlo correctamente. Entonces, y hay mucho más. Entonces, es lo que hemos observado. Mi otra pregunta, tengo otra pregunta más, es acerca de ese servicio. Se está pensando solamente para las casas residenciales, no para las áreas de departamentos, ¿cierto?
That's a really good question. So I think that's still a conversation point and that we're trying to get some input on. One of the questions we had on the community survey we put out was if folks lived in apartment communities or single family homes. It's certainly much easier to do a program like this in a single family home setting. But I think there is opportunity to be creative about it as well. So, we've thought about a service that doesn't necessarily rely on a curb, like a single family home service. This could be a doorstep service, or and that there's package delivery to townhome communities. There's package delivery to some types of multifamily properties. So I think there's not necessarily needs to be only single family homes. I think that's going to be a discussion point that we need to keep talking about and thinking about the logistics of that. But it's something that is also important, that if it's a program that the county manages and regulates, that's something we can influence, versus if it's an open market competitive thing and we have no control over it, that's just at the whim of the operator in the market. So I think that's an opportunity point for this, and thinking about working with property managers to identify locations on multifamily properties where bins could be stored potentially and they could be collected from. So I think there's lots of opportunity, and we don't need to be so literal. Sue, thank you, Myra.
So first I want to say that I'm excited to hear that this is an effort that unincorporated Washington County is working with City of Beaverton, City of Hillsborough on. My question has to do with how that rate structure, or if you've thought about what the rate structure would look like there, because all of those entities have a different rate structure, and how would that be managed with the different jurisdictions?
Yes, really good question, Sue. A lot of conversation with Beaverton and Hillsborough, and I think even brainstorming with the Hauler Association on this. Staff have kind of identified 3 potential options for a pricing structure. One is I'll call it a subscription service, where you sign up and pay a monthly fee, and then you would request up to a certain amount of pickups every month. And that's essentially the rate structure that Ridwell has. You pay $17 a month or $18 a month, and you get 2 pickups a month, and you sign up for them. Another option is to have a true on-call service. So you could have a service where if you call to have a pickup, you pay per pickup. And so you would only pay when you request a pickup. So there's not like a subscription, it's just a bin or a service that you request, you get the bin. Then if you need to get it picked up, you would notify the provider that you need to pick up, and then they would charge you for that pickup. And then the third option, which is similar to our on-call model in unincorporated Washington County, would be a program participation fee of sorts, and say that's like $3 a month, or I'm just making up numbers. I don't know what numbers would be. And then every time you request a pickup, you pay $5. So you pay $3 to be part of the program, and that puts some skin in the game for the customer, so they have an incentive to actually participate, and it also helps pay for the material and the bin and the service and the account setup. And then every time that customer wants a pickup, they call in or they submit a form on the website, or they use an app that says, I want to pick up, And then every time they receive a pickup, they get a $5 charge on their bill for that pickup. So those are the three models that we've been exploring and kind of trying to think through how they would work. You're right, Beaverton and Hillsborough have a little bit of a different rate structure than Washington County. The flat fee plus cost per pickup is something that's already exists in Washington County's rate structure in our on-call service. There's a service fee, a base fee, and that doesn't exist in Hillsborough or Beaverton's current services. So that would be a change for them if they wanted to look at that model. But I think it's a good question. And it's something to think about. There, there's pros and cons of all of them. If it's a flat fee and you pay for it, regardless of whether you get pickups or not, you're maybe more incentivized to request pickups, but you're also paying more if you don't really need the full service. If you're only paying for pickups when you receive them, you could request the service and never use it. And so there's lots of stranded assets in the community that the service providers have paid for in terms of bins and setting up accounts that don't get used because people forget about it. And if there's like a service fee with a cost per pickup, the customer can kind of control the costs a little bit more, but they still have a little bit of skin in the game, so they don't forget they're part of the program and that those field assets are paid for by the ratepayers that the haulers deploy.
And so with that kind of, say it's a subscription system, I think when we were talking about Ridwell, one of my things was I wanted kind of a level playing field. That's what I really was interested in seeing. I wanted to have the materials be consistent through our area, through unincorporated Washington County, and prevent the contamination in the curbside bin. That's another thing I was worried about. But now if we are going to open it, if we were to open it up to this type of a program, would we, I'm in favor of having it being a level playing field where Ridwell could come in or any of our haulers associations, groups could be contracting with the customer rather than it just being only a closed kind of program to the franchised haulers in the area. That doesn't seem equitable to me.
You mean if it's just the franchise providers providing the service?
Right, because so that's where...
And that's the regulatory structure that the current county has in place for solid waste collection. So what you're describing is more similar to an exemption because then new entrants could come into the market and play, or maybe it's more similar to a registration where
permit. Yeah, I like the permit part where there's some regulatory oversight to what's going on. And because I don't think there is any interest, like for Ridwell, to be a subcontractor. I just don't think they're interested in doing that. There would probably be a lot of entities that would want to come in if they could do so. If they could get a permit, you know. And it's early stage, and I want to say that this is early stages. I'm still getting an understanding down on what we're looking at. So, but after this presentation, I would think that a permit type of a situation would be best.
Thanks,
because we're going across all of the jurisdictions with what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's a question that we have too about what we call consistency. Mm-hmm. And part of the staff's recommendation to keep it in the system right now and not open it up to new entrants is part of the desire is to achieve consistency, to ensure that, you know, we have the level of regulatory oversight on the system to make a lot of those decisions, because you know the setting rates and setting the rate structure and ensuring they're charged the same within a service area, that's inherent to a fully regulated model. And so it doesn't mean that a permit can't do that. It just is not necessarily aligned with that concept in theory as much. And then also Beaverton, we you know, Beaverton's direction has been to kind of work inside the system to start with, and that's where we're starting to, because that's what our regulatory guidance in our code currently is. But I hear what you're saying, and I think they're very valid points.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that, you know, the cost of the program has to be captured and paid for somewhere for anybody to be doing the oversight on it. So I understand that as well. So anyway, that's my two cents.
Thank you. Any other committee members before we move into we have a couple folks up, I think, in the audience that want to make comment, but wait till the end. All right. Okay.
Yeah, so, you want me to comment too?
Sure, go ahead, Sandra, please.
I agree with Sue on that. I see you had these on slide 6, you had A, B, C, and D, and I don't see what's wrong with having B, maybe even C. I know there's a code change, but sometimes change has to happen. I mean, what we're trying to implement is something Ridwell and other companies already do, and they already have everything in place. They already have the apps, everything ready to go, and are using it. I don't see why we have to be exclusive only to the haulers, or kind of like a monopoly, it seems like to me. And we should encourage more recycling options and more free market and competition. Even we can still set the rates and still have rules and everything that everyone has to follow. Just allow others that want to come into the field to apply and be a part of it too. That was my whole thing from the beginning. Not necessarily an exemption, but to have everybody under some kind of regulation to, I don't know, something like that.
Thanks, Sandra. And you know, some of those things are mutually exclusive. You know, an open market is not rate regulated, so we wouldn't be able to rate regulate that. And we couldn't, in an open market or permit structure, we can't tell them who to provide service to. So there could be picking and choosing on what community members are offered the services. So those are the benefits of a regulated monopoly. And it you know, the monopoly word is a monopoly is not necessarily a good thing, but a regulated monopoly serves a purpose. It provides continuity of services. It provides everybody access to those services. And so that's why the current solid waste system is set up that way, because those services have been deemed essential. And we need to make sure that everyone has access to them. So some of these other regulatory approaches do not necessarily meet that. And maybe multifamily is a good example of that, which maybe is a reason to push on that side of things if they stays in. But it's a difficult sector to serve. It's more challenging. There's more hoops to jump through. And so an open market is likely not to serve that sector because it's going to be more challenging to do it. And I think that's the value of a regulatory approach.
It wouldn't be an open market though. You have to apply for a franchise permit or some kind of permit. It wouldn't be like everybody can join in. You'd have to apply for it and follow the rules that you have set up.
So you're just asking for more players inside of the same regulatory system, yes. Essentially.
Yeah, especially for the multifamily, because I don't think if the haulers use their client base or the customer base, multifamily is not included in that. The individuals in each apartment can't be a part of that. And I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle there.
Yeah, they could, but they're not right now, you're saying. Yeah. Was there another hand? Oh, Bernard, you put your hand down.
I mean, you pretty much answered it. I mean, that was sort of the discussion I feel like we've had, that, you know, we wanted it to be more of a controlled system. I was just giving a tour to somebody from Colorado the other day. For another reason, they have run a MRF down there, and they were talking about how they don't have a franchise system down there, and they're like, it's crazy because you can have 4 different people servicing the same neighborhood, driving around and crisscrossing paths when you could have just one truck more efficiently come through the area. But, I mean, you hit all the things that we had talked about with why we wanted it to be more of a controlled. I'm pretty much agreeing with what you were saying. So.
Thanks, Fernand. All right, last call before we close this discussion and go into comment. We're good? All right, so going into comment, we have one hand in the audience, Caleb Weaver. Kathy, do you want to pull Caleb forward? Or, I'm sorry, Erin.
I can. Give me just a second.
Hi, Caleb.
Hello, everybody. I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. It's 5 minutes, but we're not going to need to officially time you. We don't have a huge pool. So
I better not take that long. It's 7:41 after over 90 minutes. So hello, everybody. My name is Caleb Weaver, and I work at Ridwell, and have been very much appreciative of the committee's ongoing conversations and trying to figure out how to meet this demand from the public. I think we've certainly seen it, and since our launch in the Portland area, including in unincorporated Washington County. The demand that you've seen in the survey, I think, speaks to that as well, is that there is a healthy group of people that is really excited about trying to do the right thing and or do a little bit more and are willing to pay a little bit extra for that. I just want to make a couple of quick comments, very much aligned with what Ken and some of the other committee members mentioned. It is certainly possible to create a regulatory, permit system that is not limited, permit or franchise system that is not limited to the existing haulers, and achieve all of the goals that have been enunciated. As Tom noted, I think the one potential exception to that, right, is the rate setting, which it could potentially be challenging, but a little bit of open market competition is why there is this demand. Why there is this demand today, right? I mean, if Ridwell, hadn't started in Seattle because of a dad and his son trying to see if they could help their neighbors out and taking these hard to recycle items to drop-off points, like we probably wouldn't be having this discussion. And so creating a little bit of opportunity for new ideas and for new people to come in and try and figure out ways to meet that community demand, to find new opportunities for recycling or reusing items. Tom, you mentioned the reuse component. That is something that Ridwell is already doing. It is already part of Ridwell's program is reuse and looking for those opportunities. It's not something that you all have to figure out how to create from scratch. And I have a feeling that over time, there's going to be other private entities that are going to continue to try to push the ball forward there. And, this is a new and dynamic area. As these materials become more of a commodity, absolutely move them into the full franchise system, and that works. But where they're, what we're talking about are those things for all of the reasons that you mentioned, like they're a challenge and they are unstable. And so allowing the private sector to be engaged in trying to solve that problem, I think, we've already seen how it can help move us forward and would encourage you to create that opportunity. The last thing, Tom, I just wanted to respond to is, a permit or a franchise could certainly require that anybody holding that served the entire service area. There's nothing that would prevent you from doing that. So, Ridwell does serve individuals who live in multifamily units. We do that already. So there would not need to be any transition, like was mentioned with the haulers, where they'd have to, again, it would be an adjustment, like Ridwell already does that. Again, I think another reason why not just restricting this to the existing franchise holders or certificate holders would be a much better way to try to move the ball forward, I think, and create more opportunity and drive prices down and really achieve the broader community goals here of reducing waste. And that's what we're all about. That's what the whole idea is for so many solid waste managers across the Portland area today. So again, really appreciate it. Really appreciate the discussion, and hope you all take those into account as you figure out what you think works best for Washington County going forward.
Thank you, Caleb. We also looks like Beth Vargas Duncan wants to make comment. Can you pull her forward, Erin? Hi, Beth, can you hear us?
Yes. So I just thought I'm Beth Vargas Duncan. I work with the Washington County Haulers Association. I'm actually the regional director of ORA, and in that capacity, I staff the Washington County Haulers Association. And most of you know me because this is my first time not actually on the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee here, and I'm speaking from this vantage point. So I appreciate the opportunity to just respond a little bit. I think that the GRAC has done a great job working over these issues and going into great detail. But I'm a little bit concerned at the tail end of this conversation that things are getting confused as to what regulation is and is not. And probably Tom could and staff can do an excellent job helping to continually sort this out. But when we talk about the term franchise, a franchise does include typically a specific territory is serviced, that it is a partnership with the city. Franchise fees or county. Franchise fees are paid back to the jurisdiction for oversight, as Tom has already depicted. It's a highly regulated system where the regulators do regulate rates. And if they're talking about a hybrid system, I just think that it's starting to get confusing because when people are talking about a franchise, I don't know that there are that many folks that would want to subcontract that don't already hold a franchise. And that may occur under the haulers providing the service. You know, it could be that there would be some subcontracting opportunities, and you don't necessarily have to hold a franchise to be a subcontractor. So if you subcontract with a franchisee, so there's already a lot of ways built into the current system without a code change that these same services can be provided and you can enjoy the benefits of the highly regulated system as it exists today. So if there's a new regulatory limited addition, I think that I just don't want it to get confused with the franchise system. And as Tom already said, you know, some of these things are starting, they're mutually exclusive. I think that was a good term. But that would be my ask and my observation is that I think that some terms are being thrown around and it's confusing to folks. So I'll stop there, but I'm happy to answer questions if as appropriate.
Thank you, Beth. All right, any other attendees? I'm sorry, I was looking for the right word. Interested in comment during this comment period? And going once, going twice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That is going to conclude the conversation. Next steps, we will have a meeting in January. Our regularly scheduled meeting is on the second Thursday of the month. That is January 13th, but we might be communicating with you all between now and then to look into pushing it back maybe a week or so to the 20th so that staff have a little more time to come prepared to a conversation because of the holidays. Lots of folks taking some time off, so we want to make sure that we can have a really good conversation. So we'll be in touch with everybody to make sure that if there's any rescheduling, we work through that and hopefully plan to convene in January. Kathy, do you have anything else to?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if any of you think of something after the meeting, between now and the next meeting, please shoot Tom or I an email or give us a call. We're really interested in continuing the conversation. And if you're like me, a lot of times I'm after like an hour from now, I'll be like, oh, I should have mentioned whatever. So never hesitate.
All right, thank you, everybody. That is, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Erin, you can stop the recording. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for attending the December 9th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. Per usual, this recording will be posted to the GRAC website within 1 week. Thank you.
Bye.